You're listening to Last Word Radio, where you get the last word. Welcome to the Fourth Line Podcast, part of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. This is July the 28th, 2020. With you today is myself, Carl, and Stevie Nick.
And you know what else is with us, Carl? Live sports.
I have to pick and choose what I put on my TV right now, Nick.
It's kind of crazy how it went from nothing to just here's everything.
Yeah, right? I mean, in some regards, but and we'll get to some of that. We'll get to how some sports not happening right now. But we have already had one hockey game played today. Like, not an inter squad, like an actual game between two opposing teams.
With referees and everything.
And there's another one about to start. We have multiple of those happening. We have the playoffs start on Saturday. So this is Tuesday we're recording this. Saturday they start for real. Have you cleared your schedule?
It's pretty clear all weekend.
I checked mine today, and actually the only thing I have on there is that we will be we're bringing you this show a day late. We're going to bring you next week's show a day early. So the only thing on my schedule now is to talk to Nick about all the hockey I watched.
I don't even know how we're going to talk next week.
It's going to be a lot. It's going to be great, though. We'll have, by the time we're here next week, all those matchups will have started, and we'll have actual hockey. So, but I want to start with kind of an interesting phone call. I don't know if you heard, did you listen to last week's show?
I listen every week, Carl.
So you always listen to the end?
Obviously.
What were your thoughts on the phone call that I received from Mr. Wayne?
Look, Carl, if I'm being honest with you, I think you let that guy do way too much talking.
I mean,
okay, this call was supposed to be about me, and you let him go.
Turns out he needs a platform.
Who knew?
Who knew that? I don't know. An HR manager? I don't even know what his title was, but anyways, did you hear?
Do it. I mean, give him what he wants. Let's get it done and over with. So it'll help me get this job.
Okay, so if you want to, you can go to waynesdryrub.com. The website that he promoted at the end of the show last week. You could head there and find out. I mean, it looks like he promoted. It looks like he's just getting it off the ground, though. Like, it's not anything to be excited about, but he did ask me something very important, Nick.
What's that?
We did talk a little bit after, because a guy wants to talk barbecue. I'm going to let him talk barbecue. So talked with him a little bit more, and he said he wants some help filling those in. So I said, look, I'll give you a hand. So we're trying to create a collection of barbecue recipes at waynesdryrub.com, where you can go there. So if you, the listener, or you, Nick, have a barbecue recipe, and especially a spice recipe, a dry rub recipe that you want to share with us, send it on over, and we will post it. We'll promote. If you want to promote anything with that, we will post your thing, your recipe, the thing you want to promote. It's all going to be up there, and we'll help Wayne get waynesdryrub.com off the ground.
You know I got recipes for you, Wayne. You know it, and I'm just promoting myself as a candidate.
So did you hear anything this week?
I haven't heard yet, but I did hear some other stuff within the hockey world that makes me scared for my potential for this job.
Okay, well, we'll get to those things. We'll get to lots of things. We're going to talk about some management choices in the NHL this week. We'll talk to that. We'll talk about some name decisions this week. We'll talk about NHL teams get ready. We're going to preview the Western Conference playoffs this week. All of that. If you want to send us a recipe, all you have to do, you could DM it to us on Twitter at Fourth Line Podcast. Mail at the Fourth Line Podcast is the mail at thefourthlinepodcast.com. Don't forget the .com like I just did. Mail at thefourthlinepodcast.com. Email it to us. Tell us who you are, what you want to promote alongside it. Because you know what? Wayne wants to come on our show and try to promote his blog. You can promote your thing right alongside it. And if you have a picture, even better. And,
I think Wayne would have no problem with that.
Yeah, if we're helping Wayne build his site, he can certainly do this. So we're just gonna help Wayne make this a little fun thing. So head on over there, send those off. Before we get to the rest of the show, let's remind everyone about the fine folks at ATB, the official bank of the Fourth Line Podcast. And I know in these difficult, confusing times where a lot of us aren't sure what to do, having a good bank is more important than ever, Nick. And being able to have someone that you can trust with your finances and your future is important. And ATB is the bank that we trust here at the Fourth Line Podcast, where they let us be able to do the things that we need to, and they can be that for you. Head to atb.com and find out what they can do for you. If you're looking for a bank that meets your needs, they're it. So do that. I see teams taking the ice, Nick, for the pregame festivities in Toronto.
You know what? I saw that too. I saw it on Twitter. Apparently there's members of the media are allowed into the arena for the games.
What is happening with that?
This was like a big thing this week where they all kind of went off that they're not allowed in the bubble, but they're at the games. So I guess what they were denied access to was practices and being allowed to stay in the bubble.
Like, I entirely agree with the fact that you shouldn't be able to have media harassing you while you're trying to eat scrambled eggs in the morning. I think you should not have them in the bubble. That seems entirely okay to me.
Yeah, me too. And especially just the idea of minimizing the amount of people in your bubble, I think is totally understandable.
Yeah. And I mean, I get from the media perspective, right? They're there. I'm surprised they're even there because, majority of the teams here are from the States. They're coming from American markets and coming up here. I don't even know how they got in the country, if we're being honest.
That's a fair question. I'd rather not speculate on that.
Right? There's a baseball team that I know of. They were told you're not welcome here anymore and had to go find a different home. And yet sports media are being allowed in. So I don't know all of that. I get like the broadcasters and stuff, but listening to, some pregame talk today, a lot of these guys, like radio guys and all that, they're having to watch it off the broadcast the exact same as we are. So yeah. A lot of these media and the broadcasters are going to be doing that coming up here. It's going to make for some interesting times.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing. They'll finally be on the same time delay that we're on when we're watching the games.
That's true. And in all honesty, it'll also let us, talk about what we see as well, right? They'll have that same perspective. There's a little bit lost because sometimes they can see things that we can't, which is part of the nice thing about listening to a radio broadcast of the game. Yeah. But being able to do this, it'll give you that same kind of sense. And I don't know how much you've watched of baseball with them doing a similar thing, right? Yeah. The Blue Jays are currently they're doing their broadcast at a Tim and Sid studio.
Yep.
And right. I mean, they've got all the cameras and all the information they need. It's honestly as good, if not better, than the information you'd be able to get at the ballpark.
I also heard them say that the MLB, like, timekeeper and scorekeepers are not in the stadiums either.
No, they're not.
From home.
Yeah, not even from like an office somewhere. They're watching the game the same as we are.
It's wild.
Could you imagine if we've all had Zoom calls interrupted by family. Could you imagine that in the middle of a game? It's like, why isn't the scoreboard updating? Yeah, my kid just showed up. It'll be a bit. Sorry.
The mailman's trying to deliver something. Can you guys give me a second? I just gotta get the door.
Yeah, I just ordered a lot of light bulbs off Amazon and I need to go get that.
I gotta think those guys are behind lock and key on game time. Like,
you gotta think so.
That's not a working from the kitchen table kind of evening.
No. But we've seen, so these players showed up in the bubble earlier this week. They're playing games now. Some of them have practiced. I think every team's had time to practice at this point in time. What do you think of what we're seeing of life inside the NHL bubble?
I mean, it sounds pretty boring. They can't really go anywhere or do anything other than practice. So I don't know. I haven't seen too much about what life is like. I do know the NHL seems to be doing a good job of keeping this bubble closed.
Yeah, definitely, right? And they said leading into the bubble that there were no cases. They've now tested again, and there are still no cases thus far. And so that's what we've got. One thing I kind of wanted to think of, I don't know if you've seen what I've been doing since COVID started, Nick. I also don't go anywhere and don't do anything. So it's essentially like life in the NHL bubble.
I can only imagine they do what we do.
Right. They all, I mean, we hear it, right? They're also sitting around playing video games a lot. So
yeah,
it's just like this. But so you watched the game or some of it earlier today. Is that right?
I watched a little bit of it on mute. It did start during working hours. So it was on in the background, but yeah, I did watch a little bit of it on mute. So I didn't hear what the crowd sounds were like. And this game right now is on mute for me too. From a visual perspective, I thought they did a pretty good job with some of the camera angles.
It is interesting, right? So we do have a different camera angle than we normally would. We got to watch this camera angle as someone, I don't even know who it is exactly who just scored. We might be on a different amount of delay.
I'm definitely delayed.
Okay. Mikheyev. That's who just did it for the Leafs.
There we go.
Nick, spoilers, Nick. My direct cable and the streaming service, a little different delay. But it is interesting. We get a little bit more above the ice than we normally would have.
It's almost like the outdoor game angles.
A little bit, yeah. Because it feels like, I mean, I don't know exactly what they have. It feels like it's on a big boom crane camera.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's just kind of if it tracks the motion automatically, which would be pretty cool.
Like tracks the puck based on that?
Yeah. And the camera just moves back and forth.
It'd be I wonder what it does when it loses the puck. Like there's got to obviously be someone sitting there who can override what it's doing. But
I would think so. And I'm sure that happens a lot. And they just switch the angle and then go back to it when it's reset.
Yeah. Interesting. So broadcast, I mean, from visually, it looks really good. It's interesting. I haven't seen, I mean, we're a minute 30 into this game, but from that perspective, looks great. I assume will sound a little bit off with the crowd noise. What about the style of play? Did it look like in these warm-up games, because we still have a few more days of these exhibition games, did it feel like preseason? Did it feel like regular season, or did it have kind of a more intenseness to it?
I thought it was actually pretty intense for an exhibition game. Now, I think part of that is these guys are all part of the team. There's nobody who's kind of trying to make the team here. There's nobody that they're trialing. Like, this is the team and they're just getting warmed up. But I was impressed by the level of intensity. There is quite a bit of contact from what I saw along the boards. Nobody seemed to hesitant to get too close to each other. It wasn't rough by any means. Like, there was no after the whistle stuff. But during play, I was surprised by how fast paced it was.
Yeah, this looks exactly like a competitive regular season game. Yeah. For sure.
You can tell they're starting to get into the mindset of this isn't just preparing for a season, this is the playoffs.
Right. You have one game to get ready. And I think you will see it. And I know particularly and we'll get to the matchups coming up here, but there is, Calgary, Edmonton are playing the last game tonight. And those are both teams that are likely going to split the goaltending in this game, because in the playoffs, you ride the hot hand, right? Yeah. And especially in a situation where both of those teams have had almost a 50-50 split, and you have one game to figure out who's got the hot hand. That's where we'll see some of those fights for roster spots. It's not a roster spot, but it's who's going to start.
It's a starting spot, yeah. Yeah, and I think Pittsburgh did the same thing this afternoon too.
Yeah, and I mean, I expect the Rangers will probably do that, like split that when they have theirs. These teams, Leafs, Habs, they're just going to run Anderson and Price because that's who's going to be going for them.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Glad it's back. Great to see it. Glad that I have to turn off a baseball game to be able to watch this.
Totally agree. I can't wait for Saturday. I can't wait for the marathon to start, the madness to start.
So, important question. I was thinking about this today as I was driving around the city. What is your snack or beverage plan for Saturday?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have one, to be honest with you, right now. I'm definitely going to load up on some chips and dip. I really like this, the Ruffle chips with, I make a French onion dip with sour cream and dry onion soup. But the thing is, you don't want to get into that too early because then it bloats you in the middle of the afternoon and you want to go to sleep.
See, I'm thinking one thing per game. So
one snack?
One snack or a beverage of choice. At some point in there, maybe a more substantial meal.
Yeah.
But I think because there's 4 games each day.
Yeah.
And so I think I need 4 different menu items to get me through each of those days.
Well, I mean, hopefully Wayne's Dry Rub comes through.
If you could head to Wayne's Dry Rub and see what he has for suggestions. And actually, I was wrong. We have 5 games on Saturday and then 4 games Sunday. So they're even going faster than normal with this. Who's playing both days? Is someone's got to be playing both days, or my counting's very good.
No, there might be some back-to-backs.
No, I know that's what it is. It's they also start the round robin matchups on Sunday. So they have 5 of the series games Sunday, 3 of those, and then a round robin game. Flyers Bruins also play that day. So that's what it is.
I do think there are some back-to-back games in the schedule, though.
Yeah, I mean they're trying to get
crazy,
them in.
But they got to get through it.
Yeah, they do. So there you go. 5 games Saturday. So I need to add a bonus snack in there. Just not so bad.
If you don't have a groove in your couch yet, look for one Sunday morning.
Right, and it starts noon Eastern time, Sunday or Saturday, which is, if you're West Coast, right, that's 9 a.m. Pacific time. You literally roll out of bed on a Saturday, make that cup of coffee, and by the time it's kicked in, hockey's on.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Hockey in July.
It is a great thing. And I kind of mentioned it, no COVID cases anywhere in sight, which, I mean, if you're in a bubble and there's no cases, in theory, unless you would catch it from some staff in and around that have been leaving the bubble, you're pretty safe.
That's great news. Or media coming in and out of the arena. But but it's great news. Good for them. Everyone, myself included, we were all skeptical of how they were going to pull this off. Granted, it's early days. There's, 5 weeks of this to go. But it's a really, really strong start. Especially with the backdrop of what's going on in the MLB right now.
Right. I mean, it took baseball 5 days for 14 members of a 30-person team to come down with COVID. So certainly not going to get too confident yet, but looks good, looks promising, and excited for them to hopefully not have to shut it down.
Yeah, totally agree. If these players can stay disciplined, not just the players, the staff and trainers and all that can stay disciplined, they shouldn't have any issues. No. It seems to be locked down pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely, which is great. Very excited for that. Big news in the NHL this week. The Seattle hockey team has a name, Nick.
And a logo.
We now have the Seattle Kraken, future members of the National Hockey League, with kind of an interesting logo, kind of an S that looks like an ocean monster. sorts, and kind of the continuous nautical theme with the team. What do you think about all their marketing and that kind of stuff?
I think it's great. I think that their logo and their color scheme is awesome. It's unique. It's different from anything else in the NHL. Did you see their secondary logo with the S wrapped around an anchor?
And what I love about it is the tip of the anchor is also the Space Needle in Seattle. I don't know if you...
Oh, I totally missed that.
Yeah.
That's great.
So just little things like that, which are super cool.
It's awesome. They can have a lot of fun with the concept behind that team name.
Yeah. And I mean, like you have a built-in mascot, probably. I mean, you could go with like a Kraken, some sort of sea monster. You could just go with like some sort of sailor character, right?
Yeah.
Lots of potential for things there. Another thing that I found really interesting, and they intentionally did this, Nick, their home jerseys have 4 main colors, red and then 3 different blues. No white, though, anywhere in it. So kind of gives a different contrast on the ice, which is really cool.
I love it. I know you pointed that out to me, and I never really thought about that before. But I think it's a really nice little touch.
Yeah. And like something that's a clearly intentional thing, but just like you said, adds a little bit to it. Do you know what other club the Kraken have joined?
No.
I'll give you a hint. They've joined Colorado, Tampa Bay, and Minnesota in this club.
Colorado, Tampa Bay, and Minnesota. I have no idea. Go ahead.
The Avalanche.
Yeah.
Lightning.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah. So some
Kraken.
sort of weather-related thing?
None of them, no. But none of them end in an S. They're not plurals of the team.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not sure what kind of weather is Kraken themed, but I appreciate the fact that, for anyone coming from meteorology info, we're sorry.
I just assume Kraken come out when there's a storm at sea.
Yeah, I would think so. I think that they would typically just stay hidden otherwise.
Also, wild doesn't really make sense from a weather perspective.
There's some wild weather out there. Like, man, what was the weather like today? It was wild.
It was wild. Oh my God. My brain.
Anyways, so welcome the Seattle Kraken. I think that was what most people expected and or wanted the team to be called. So good on them for working with the city. And I don't know, did you watch their press conference where they announced it?
I didn't know.
I think one thing that I really liked is they had like 3 different people talk during it. It was not one of the Lewickis, the marketing director, but then also the community involvement person. So who's in charge of, building those community relationships and kind of grassroots in hockey in Seattle was one of them. So I thought, with all the people who could have spoken, right, they could have had Ron Francis, the GM, go up there and speak, but they had someone who just has a role with the team in the front office, but talking about how they wanted to work on building hockey in Seattle and just really being inclusive with it. And I thought that was great. Yeah,
they seem to be very community driven. They seem to have kind of their pulse on their finger on the pulse of sustainability. Like I believe the arena is striving to be carbon neutral. So, they're really trying to do a lot of good things for their community out there, which I think is great.
Absolutely. So right now, actually, Nick, they're showing on the broadcast the benches, and they also had someone videoing these people cleaning the benches earlier, which, I mean, I probably wouldn't have liked that if I was them. But it does go to show kind of the steps that are having to be taken because, one, they have to clean these benches because the Flyers and Penguins played at this arena earlier today. So cleaning the benches, locker rooms have to be cleaned, kind of all those spaces. But the other thing that I noticed that really stood out to me that I appreciated, no one standing between the benches, and it made me happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Although I feel like during the game this afternoon, there was somebody between the benches. I could be wrong because I was only kind of half watching, but I could have sworn I saw somebody between the benches. Maybe they were wiping it down.
Like just continually, just the sanitizer. Anyways, interesting. So welcome to the NHL, Seattle Kraken. And we're excited for you to show up and probably be not as good as the Golden Knights are when they started.
No, I think everyone learned their lesson at the last expansion draft. Sorry, correction. I think Florida learned their lesson at the last expansion draft.
Oh, yeah, and I think a lot of teams are more prepared because they have longer to prepare, so they're not, giving Marc-Andre Fleury to them as well, right?
Yeah.
And paying them to take Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting expansion draft when it happens to see how teams have changed their strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about Ron Francis, general manager of the Seattle Kraken. There's a change in general manager in Arizona this week. Mere days. I think the day that the team showed up in Edmonton for the bubble, John Chayka quit as the general manager of the Arizona Coyotes.
I think officially, formally, that's how it went down. He quit. But what a weird situation this whole thing is. And the time that it happened, it's all very strange.
So walk us through some of it, because it is strange. It is confusing. What happened between him and the Coyotes that led to this being the result?
So, this was all broken by Elliot Friedman. I don't remember what day it was, but I think you said it was the day of or the day before they left for the bubble. So from what I can put together, apparently a few weeks ago, John Chayka asked his ownership group if he could have permission to interview for another job. Now, this was not for another GM job, so they granted him permission to do the interview. He was offered the job and he wanted to accept it. And this is where it got kind of wonky because they didn't want him to accept the job as the team was heading into the bubble to play for the Stanley Cup. Okay. So he quit.
So they gave him permission to interview for something. And then when he wanted to take it, they were upset at him for it.
That's kind of what I'm getting out of this whole thing. I think they said that it's not another GM job, but I'm not clear on whether or not it was with another team or another sport. I really don't know where this new job is for him. I'm sure it'll come out at some point.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand the timing of this all.
It is interesting timing. I mean, for him, if you have an opportunity that you would rather have, you can't pick when those opportunities show up, right? If a VP of business development job with the Buffalo Sabres shows up and John Chayka wants it, you have to jump on it.
Carl, this is why I think I haven't heard from them yet.
You think he's going to Buffalo?
I think they found someone smarter than me.
I mean, I tried to pump your tires as much as I could in between driver up talk, so.
I listened to the phone call, Carl.
Forgot about that.
Wayne did most of the talking.
I mean, he's a chatty guy. Nice, great guy, though. Great guy.
Great guy. So yes, okay. So the ownership group, very strange. You grant him permission, and then you're upset when he wants to take the job. But on the other side of that coin, what I can't wrap my head around this whole idea that he has been the GM of the Coyotes for how long now? 5 years, 4 years?
It was about longer. That, yeah.
And this is his team. He's made the trades. He's drafted. He's built them up to be able to contend for the Stanley Cup this year. And now he wants out right before they drop the puck. Yeah. Must be a good job.
It's got to be, right? I mean, I also don't like the Coyotes' odds of doing well in these playoffs, but I also think there was a certain part because we talked, was it last week we talked about the fact ownership had met with Taylor Hall regarding staying, taking Chayka out of that equation already.
Well, now I'm wondering if he took himself out of that equation. Because if he asked permission to interview for this job however many weeks ago, he probably told them, you guys should meet with him because I'm looking at this other job.
Right. If you want to, I might not be the guy there.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I get that, right? And I get that dynamic being there. So it could have gone both ways without knowing it, right? Maybe he was already looking. Maybe he was upset and was willing to leave and just quit early because of that offense.
Right. Now, this is happening. He just signed a contract extension this year, a multi-year extension, did he not?
Yeah.
So he was committed to them. So I don't know what this job is. It'll be interesting. The story is going to come out at some point because when all this news broke, Coyotes ownership and Chayka had it out publicly through the media, which I thought was kind of interesting. And he alluded to the fact that there is more to this story. It will come out one day. And until then, he wishes them the best. Yeah.
In the meantime, Steve Sullivan has been put in place as the interim, but like they said interim, but it also sounded like there's a good chance he keeps that title into next year. Interim general manager there.
It kind of sounded like he'd kind of been doing the job lately.
Maybe he'd also taken Taylor Hall for dinner.
Maybe Taylor Hall's just cashing in all these free dinners.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the news. Should we, I mean, we're already deep into the show. We need to also preview a Western Conference. This is what happens when hockey comes back, Nick. Some Western Conference matchups. So
yeah, let's do it.
Let's start. I wrote these down in order that they play in on the weekend. So first up, Nick, the Chicago Blackhawks and the Edmonton Oilers. Edmonton Oilers technically were the 4th seed in the playoffs, but had played more games than the Dallas Stars. So on point per game total, the Dallas Stars made it for the bye instead of the Oilers. The Oilers now have to play the Chicago Blackhawks.
This is the most likely Western Conference series to be an upset, right?
I feel like this is the one that actually feels like a big difference as well. No, I would disagree with you. I think Minnesota-Vancouver would be the bigger upset.
Fair. Yeah. Minnesota is still just such an average team.
Because Chicago had started to turn it around and were playing actually pretty good hockey when this thing shut down.
Yeah, they were. Like, I don't think Chicago is going to make it easy for Edmonton by any means. But I don't think if I'm an Oilers fan and I am in the Oilers front office, and you know what? If I'm an Oilers player, there is no excuse to lose this play-in series.
Zero. You are the favorite. You should beat them. Thinking back to the trade deadline, they picked up some significant pieces, right? Andrea Athanasiou is on the Oilers, if you forgot that little tidbit. Giving them really a good, from what I recall, played at best on McDavid's wing. And so being able to give that piece there, and then the Draisaitl line behind, being able to give the Oilers 2 very good lines in the top 6. The biggest question, touched on it earlier, is who is going to be in net for them. Right? They've got Koskinen and Mike Smith. And we saw last year in the playoffs, the Flames also had kind of the Rittich-Smith tandem. Not sure who to go with. Went with Smith in the playoffs, and he kept the Flames in that series against the Avalanche.
He's such a weird goalie, eh?
So weird.
Like, he really shouldn't be that good. And I think during the regular season, he reflects that. But in the playoffs, where's Mike Smith coming from? Where was this Mike Smith in the season?
He goes on unbelievable heaters at the strangest of times, and like in the same way, like Mike Smith should not, in the same way he shouldn't be as good. He shouldn't play the puck as much as he does.
Yeah,
like he plays it in the weirdest and worst ways, and in spite of that, he manages to play well. So
dude is fearless. It's so stressful watching goalies play like that. But I gotta think they're gonna go with Koskinen.
You think so?
I think so. I mean, this might be one of the teams that's most likely to go back and forth more than some others, but I think you start with Koskinen.
Let's say in a situation like this or the Flames, potentially we talked about the Rangers and them having multiple goalies that they could go with last week, less so. With some of these teams, the Penguins as well, how long of a leash are you giving for these goalies?
You cannot afford to give them a long leash. This is a best of 5 series.
Like, let's say you give up 2 goals in the first period.
You gotta give them a longer leash than that, Carl.
You give up another 2 goals in the second period.
You're out.
You're down 4-2. Gone?
You can't afford the goalies to start slipping.
Yeah.
You can't fall behind by a game in these series.
No. Because you need to see, if you're down and you think, all right, we need a miracle to come back. This guy's shown he's not on it today. I gave him a chance to turn around the second, couldn't do it. I need to see what this guy can give me in the third period so I can trust him to put him in net for the second game.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're not, like you said, you're then behind and you're making that change halfway through game 2 when you're already down a game and a half. It's over at that point almost.
It's too late at that point. You can't afford that.
You have to be a Toronto Maple Leafs style offense to be able, or Tampa, to be able to overcome that kind of bad goaltending.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So Oilers have one of the few players who opted not to play in these playoffs, in Mike Green.
Yeah, it's true.
He was traded at the deadline from the Red Wings to the Oilers and played a total of 2 games in an Edmonton uniform.
Great pickup for the Oilers. Chicago, Corey Crawford started to come back. Still a little bit, he was delayed showing up at camp, still not 100% for him being the goaltender. But if he was almost back to Corey Crawford of old when he was with the Blackhawks at the end of the season. Which
is kind of surprising to see. I was surprised to see him turn up at camp this year. I don't know why I thought this. I just thought Corey Crawford was done. Like they were going to bury him and be done with him. But now that I'm looking at his stats, like, dude didn't do that bad this year.
No, certainly not, right? Did well enough to bring this team back into respectability. Certainly they would not have made the playoffs in a regular season, but would not have embarrassed themselves.
No, not at all. And they've still got Robin Lehner there too. Like, I think they're in a pretty good position from a goaltending perspective.
Robin Lehner traded to Vegas.
They don't have. Oh, that's why Malcolm Subban's on their roster.
Yeah. There you go.
And the trade deadline was so long ago.
Who even knows, right? That's why we're here, Nick. We're here to remember all these things. I knew Mike Green opted out for the Oilers. I did not remember when he got traded. And if it wasn't for listening to sports radio today, I would have completely forgotten that Athanasiou was an Oiler. So
yeah, I actually forgot that till you brought it up. So what do you think? Can the Blackhawks give them a run for the money?
I say Blackhawks have a 36% chance of beating the Oilers.
Yeah, that's pretty high.
You're less than that?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Oilers should win this series.
They should, yeah. They, in theory, had enough points to be a top 4 team. They're 5th. Blackhawks are the 12th seed. A 5 versus 12, you should be able to beat them 3 out of 5 games.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, next up on that schedule, they also get fired up on Saturday. The Calgary Flames and they're actually the only other matchup. They're the late game on Saturday. The Calgary Flames and the Winnipeg Jets. And I think this matchup is going to be the closest of them all.
So I was thinking about this specific matchup right before we started recording for some reason. And do you ever get like a feeling that's not based in any fact or anything? I just thought, oh, Calgary's playing Winnipeg. And I had an immediate thought. And my thought was that Calgary's going to get dummied in this series. And I have nothing to back that up. I didn't think about it that deeply. That's just the first thing that popped into my mind.
I can buy that. Absolutely. The Calgary Flames are a team that are so hot and cold, and coming in with no lead into this could very easily come in and put up 3 duds.
I just don't have that much faith in this team. And maybe that's because of the performance they put up last year in the playoffs, which was very, very underwhelming. But I'm starting to lose faith in their top players.
I mean, we saw at the start of camp, and they never really came out and fully said why. Johnny Gaudreau was not with the main roster at a significant amount of practices with this team. And so you have that kind of as an issue, right? You have some of these players who haven't. Johnny Gaudreau has gone through stretches where he can't perform. Sean Monahan, also the same way. In net, David Rittich, Cam Talbot. It's looking like it's Rittich's net thus far. We'll see what happens in the game tonight before they make their decision ahead of Saturday. But a lot of question marks with this Flames team. Not really a lot of question marks with the Jets. We know what they are.
Yeah, I mean, I know they're not the same team as they were the last few years, but they still, you look at the depth of their at least forwards, and it looks so much more dominant than what the Flames have in their roster.
Well, because Hellebuck,
and then there's Hellebuck, yeah.
Right? Hellebuck has held that team together this year when they have lost significant pieces on defense, right? Dustin Byfuglien for his issues with the team, Jacob Trouba because of the trade away, and then still a solid core up front, right? Kyle Connor, Blake Wheeler, Patrick Laine, like those pieces are still all there. And I'm with you. In a playoff series, you're going to ride those horses more than you would anywhere else. They're able to do that. And I'm going to make a pick, and I would pick the Jets to win this.
Yeah, I would too. Just have a feeling, you know?
Well, and it's the same thing, right? If you, in almost any of these matchups, I know I literally just picked the Oilers with a questionable goaltending situation, but in almost any of these, when you're not sure which goaltender to go with, because neither of them have won the job, I'm probably going to take the other team that you know what you're going with. You know who you're playing in front of, and you know how to hold that down.
100%. I mean, the players need to have confidence in their goaltending situation too, right?
Yeah. And we'll
makes
see.
It harder for them to play when they're not confident with their goaltender.
Yeah.
Okay, so Winnipeg, next up.
Next up is the Steve Sullivan-led and built Arizona Coyotes versus the Nashville Predators. Nick, that gets fired up on Sunday, and that's the early game on Sunday. That's happening at 2:00 Eastern time.
And the Coyotes are wearing their cool jerseys.
Are they? They're wearing the Desert Dog jerseys?
I think so.
This feels great.
That's at least their Twitter logo.
Their jerseys in the playoffs? Yes, please. I mean, this isn't the playoffs, is it? I don't know.
The stats count towards the playoffs. I don't know.
It's a playoff then. So, where are you on this one? This one's, a closer matchup in the standings. These are two teams that inevitably were going to be fighting for a playoff spot together. Ended up, they were separated by 4 points when the season ended.
I am surprised to hear that. I always want to cheer for Phil Kessel. That being said, I don't see how these Coyotes beat the Nashville Predators.
Yeah. This is a Predators team that added significant pieces this year.
Yeah.
Should have been better.
Yeah.
Pekka Rinne, a big reason why they weren't better. And I would not be surprised if if Saros, I say this every year, but I would not be surprised if he is the goaltender of this team by the time this playoff run is finished.
Well, I mean, just keep saying it because at some point you'll be right. And then you can say, I've been saying this for years.
You know what? This is my soapbox, and I finally was correct. But
yeah, it's going to happen at some point. I mean, Rinne was going to hit that wall sooner or later. So that wouldn't surprise me. I still think, their goalies don't have to be out of this world. The Predators have a strong enough decor to shut the Coyotes down.
Absolutely. And I part of what I think took some time this year is some of those extra additions and some of those changes to this roster this season. Took some getting used to. The Predators had won 6 of their last 10 games when the season ended. Certainly turned it around as a team and were playing fairly well. So this is a team that can and will do well in the playoffs, and I expect them to beat the Coyotes.
Yeah, me too.
Aside from the Coyotes even picked up the best piece at the deadline in Taylor Hall. I just still don't see enough from them to be able to do it.
No, me neither. I don't see enough for them to be able to do it, and I don't see enough for them to be able to convince Taylor Hall to stay.
Yeah, no, me either. Before we get to this last matchup, the Canucks and the Wild, can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that Elliot Friedman still has not even trimmed his beard since COVID started and is now on national television with that monstrosity?
Not only that, Sportsnet is leaning into it. Like, they're putting Twitter polls out saying, should we make Elliot Friedman shave his beard? I can't believe this guy's going on the air with this thing.
Like, he got a haircut quite recently. Like, that is a well-trimmed haircut he's sporting right now. The rest of what he has going on hasn't been touched since March.
You know how they'll sometimes bring in players to do commentary during the playoffs?
Yeah.
They got to get Joe Thornton in beside Elliot Friedman.
Absolutely. I mean, not like directly beside him because
6 feet
physical
away.
distancing, but 6 feet away. And you know what? I think we should see if we can spot the differences.
I totally agree.
If you put Joe Thornton in that seat, could we tell that it's not Elliot Friedman?
We should find out. That sounds like a sketch that they would do at the NHL Awards.
That's absolutely. I mean, look, we've given them multiple ideas already this year. Can we stop giving them free ideas?
Either that or we can just convince them to cancel the award show.
That too. Look, NHL Awards Committee, if you want more information, at Dwayne'sDryRub.com, where you can find out more about some of our ideas.
Okay, back to Elliot Friedman's beard. That is a respectable beard for a man who hasn't shaved for 4 months. Like, if you looked at him before, you're like, there's babyface Friedman again. But no, he is like, he can grow a big beard.
That is
not
sizable.
that much time.
If I had have stopped shaving, like if I hadn't have shaved between now and then, I wouldn't have looked anything like that.
No, not even close.
Yeah, I mean, good on him. He's clear and has a full head of hair up top. Like he's, I'm sure he's 50 or so. Looking good.
He's killing it.
Yeah. Good on you, Elliot. All right, this last matchup.
Speaking of wild.
Speaking of wild, we got Elliot's beard and we've got the team from Minnesota. and the weather, Nick.
And the weather.
What do you think about this one?
I think it's just going to be Vancouver. Every time the Wild come up on the show, I'm like pulling my hair out, and I have a lot of hair. And because I don't know what to say about them other than just the fact that they're meh.
Yeah, Nick's hair is the hair equivalent of Elliot Friedman's beard, for those who cannot see.
Check this out. And I got a haircut during COVID.
Yeah.
I'm almost at like bun length.
Yeah, you could man bun that. Absolutely.
Yeah, probably.
Please don't, but you could.
Next week, Carl.
I feel like, I mean, you look at the end of the season, and these teams were separated, talking about, the Coyotes and the Predators, these teams were separated by 1 point, Nick.
That's crazy.
Is insane to me. But the Canucks have almost across the board, if you were to go position by position, there's a few spots, like defense, I might give some of the positional edges to the Wild. But in net, I'm giving the edge to Vancouver. Up front, I'm giving the edge to Vancouver. Offensive depth, I'm giving the edge to Vancouver. And so Minnesota's got defense.
Yeah. I was nodding my head through that whole thing. I realized people can't see that. I totally agree. Yeah. I don't see how this Wild team is going to outscore this Canucks team.
No. I mean, Jacob Markstrom, very good season in net. Did a great job, and I expect that to continue on. We've got. I'm excited to see Elias Pettersson in in a playoff matchup, be able to start those career playoff stats because he's going to have a lot of them. This is one where, I don't have any real vested interest in it, and I'm just excited to see what the Canucks and specifically Pettersson can do now that they're back.
You know who I'm excited to see? Tanner Pearson. Really see if he can earn that long-term deal.
I hope that they specifically, I hope they're up 2-0 in this series and they just use it as a showcase of Brock Besser and Tanner Pearson. All right, boys, prove it. Make that happen.
Yeah, I got Vancouver here. I don't know. I don't have much to say about the Wild. That's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go. The other 4 teams, Colorado, St. Louis, Dallas, and Vegas. Those are obviously our top 4 seeds. They get buys. They're going to be playing in the seeding tournament. Nick, I think across the board, we kind of, Edmonton, Nashville, Vancouver, and then kind of a closer matchup between Calgary and Winnipeg. So one of those 8/9 teams going to be moving on. What do you see as the favorite to win the Western Conference?
I think it's going to be one of the top 4 teams. With the Oilers having an outside shot at it. But I don't think anyone else in the play-in is really going to beat the Blues, Avs, Golden Knights, or Stars in a 7-game series.
Yeah, I do agree. I think if the Oilers win, they would face off, presumably, if Dallas becomes the 4 seed, which they are now, they would be against Dallas. So I could see Edmonton beating Dallas. I would probably slot Vegas as the 3rd best of those top teams. I think Colorado and St. Louis, I'd give the edge to there. So I agree. One of those upper teams, probably, Colorado, St. Louis will probably face off in the finals, and they've had some very tight matchups this year.
Yeah, could be. So how are you feeling about your Avs chances? How are you feeling going into these playoffs?
I'm as happy as I could be, Nick.
Not nervous?
I should be more nervous than I am.
You will be once the play-in's done.
Once we're done. As soon as, because they play an exhibition game against the Wild, which I'll be very excited to tune into. That'll probably get my nerves going.
Yeah.
I watched the Blue Jays game this weekend. I don't know if you watched any of them, but watched the game where they blew the lead against Tampa. No, it wasn't even that. It was the season opener that they won. And I was sitting there, and my knee was bouncing in ways that it has not bounced since probably... Well, for sure, March. Nothing's had me that on edge, that sports rush where you're nervous, you're excited, and you want all of it.
Yeah. It's a good feeling, isn't it?
It felt so great.
I know.
And I'm like, man, it's back. That rush of will they, won't they? It feels so great to be back. So yes, I will be nervous come Sunday when I guess they don't play Sunday, but when there are games that count start firing up, yes, I will be nervous. But I'm excited. I mean, we've added Bowen Byram to this roster, and I don't want to hold him to the same expectations because he is a very different player. Or not a very different player. He's a different player. But like I saw what Cale Makar did when he showed up in the playoffs last year, and I would be ecstatic if we had that from Bowen Byram this year again.
That would be great for you guys.
To be able to take another defenseman and shove him in the lineup with no regular season experience and see what they can do. I think Cale Makar is going to be a better player than Bowen Byram, but man, I'm okay being wrong.
Yeah. No, I like your guys' odds in the playoffs this year. I definitely think they're better than Vegas and Dallas. St. Louis is going to be a problem.
Yeah. But you know what? I think in a 7-game series, which is what they would be facing off in, if and when they do face off, it would be close.
Oh boy, here we go, Carl. It's back.
I was gonna say you just got me nervous, so thank you for that.
Glad I could help.
All right, Nick. We are gonna be back, like we said, on Sunday, bringing you all of what happened in the exhibition games, all the latest news. I mean, lots is coming out all the time. We'll know some of these roster decisions. We'll be able to break down the first game of all these matchups and be able to kind of provide some insight into that and set you up for your first full week of the NHL playoffs, where there will be games all day, every day, and you can enjoy them while you work. So get ready for that. Reminder, if you want to contribute to waynesdryrub.com, send us a note. You can do that on the Twitters at Fourth Line Podcast, mail at thefourthlinepodcast.com. Send us anything like that, a recipe or something, or if you just want to talk about it, right? I know someone sent an email. Chad sent a tweet over today. We kind of touched on that and kind of the importance of these play-in games today. So send those in. If you have questions or something you want us to touch on, we will most likely be able to do that on these shows. Great to hear from you. Great to be chatting hockey instead of what 3 favorite movies or albums from high school you're a fan of.
Man, now that hockey's coming back, I'm spending way more time on Twitter.
There's a noticed difference of Nick's Twitter usage this week. And you know what? We welcome you back.
Oh, thank you. It's fun.
It is good. So let us know. You can go to thefourthlinepodcast.com, the website where we talk to you about hockey instead of barbecue. Head on over there. You can find great articles from our writing team. I believe the 4th overall draft pick series is going to be heading into the 70s shortly, so you can look forward to that, see who was picked 4th overall in the 70s, rank those as Mike Laybourne looks towards the Detroit Red Wings picking 4th overall in the sometime in the future NHL draft. And until next week,
it's time for us to wrap up another Fourth Line show. I know what you're thinking. You don't want us to go. Even if he has a little bit of beard stubble, Elliot Friedman's not allowed in the NHL's bubble.
The show you're listening to is part of the Alberta Podcast Network. Locally grown, community supported. Another show from the network that you should check out is Repodcasting. Have you ever watched a movie and there was an actor in it that was all wrong for the part they were playing? Have you ever wanted to imagine someone else in the role? Never fear. That's precisely why Repodcasting exists. Listen as co-hosts and cousins Janet and Lucia recast their favorite and not so favorite movies with their dream cast. They also take a moment each episode to imagine which role in the film should have been given to Tony Danza, because let's face it, Tony Danza would make every movie better. You can find Repodcasting wherever you listen to podcasts or at albertapodcastnetwork.com. Happy listening!